Hello, 7th graders, and welcome to lesson 9.1. In chapter 9, we are going to learn about circumference of circles, area of circles, and then we're going to use circumference and area to also find volume of cylinders and surface area of cylinders. All right, let's get started. All right, it's been a while since we've done geometry, so let's refresh our brains with what area is. Area is the amount of space that something takes up. It's what's inside of a shape given. So far we've learned squares, rectangle, and triangle area. Let's find the area of a triangle with a base of 14 and a height of 10. So we know our area formula for a triangle is 1/2 base times height. So this is going to be 1/2 times 14 times 10. Well, half of 14 is 7. 7 times 10 is 70. And remember, with area, we have to say units squared. So this was inches, so I said inches squared. That's because area is a number times a number. A number times a number is the number squared. All right, and a square with sides of 3.5 feet. Well, for a square, the base is the same as the height, so that's just going to be 3.5 squared, which is 12.25 feet squared. All right, solve 7 and 8 on your own. Pause the video, play it back to see if you got it right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and solve them. A rectangle with a length of 8.5 inches and width of 6 inches, that's going to be 8.5 or 8.5 times 6. Well, I know 8 times 6 is 48, half of 6 is 3, so 48 plus 3 is going to be 51 inches squared. And last one, a triangle with a base of 12.5 meters and height of 2.4 meters. It's going to be 1/2 times the base times the height. That I'll type into my calculator. And we get 15 meters squared. All right, we have some new important vocabulary when we start talking about geometry with circles. Some of that vocabulary is right here. And then I also have some additional vocabulary, so we'll just copy and paste that here after we go over those. All right, so circumference. Circumference is the distance around a circle. So we're going to say C. Diameter is a line segment that passes from one end to the other end of the circle. So that one is endpoints on the circle, the length across a circle. And then the radius is from the center to the outside. So one endpoint is at the center, one endpoint is on the circle. All right, so I added a little blurb with the important vocabulary right here. Just in simplified words, circumference is the distance around a circle. So that's going to be the whole outside. That's the circumference. The diameter is the distance across a circle. So that's the diameter. And then the radius is from the center to the outside of the circle. So the radius is also half of the diameter. And then the last one, pi. Pi is used in circle calculations. It's irrational. And for our purposes, we're going to use 3.14. Pi also looks like that. So whenever you see that symbol, you can plug in 3.14 and your calculation will be mostly accurate. So it continues forever. It's like 3.14152 something. It goes on forever. We're just going to use 3.14. And pi is this symbol. All right, so before I give you the formula for circumference, I want to see if we can figure out how pi plays a role in it. Remember from the last page, pi is an irrational constant used in circle calculations. For our purposes, we're just going to use 3.14. Now it does go on forever. We're just going to cut it off there. Okay, so we're going to explore with circumference a little bit. If you would like to follow along, if you have a tape measure at your house, you can find 3 circle objects in your house to measure. I found an oats jar with a circular lid, a cereal bowl, and a little Campbell's soup can. All right, so I'm gonna write these in. My object is the oats jar, the bowl, and the soup can. All right, and next I'm gonna insert some images so that you can see that I actually measured them. All right, there's the oats can. Notice it's about 5 1/4 inches across. And then when I measured the distance around, it was almost exactly 16 inches. All right, next is the bowl. It was almost exactly 6 inches across, and then about 18 1/2, maybe 19 inches around. We'll say 19. And last was the soup can. It was 2 1/2 inches across and 8 1/2 inches around. I just realized I flipped all these, so this should be the diameter. Our inches across we did first, and then this should be the circumference. The distance around I did next. All right, sorry about that, guys. Okay, so what do we notice about the diameter and the circumference? Remember, pi is 3.14. How do we think we can get from the diameter to the circumference using pi? All right, well, hopefully you noticed that each diameter is about 1/3 of the circumference. 5 times 3 is 15. 6 times 3 is 18, and 2 1/2 times 3 is 7.5. So all of these were pretty darn similar if we multiply by 3. Pi is slightly over 3. So our formula for circumference is going to be pi times the diameter. This is an important thing to have in your notes. All right, let's skip down to example 1 here. An irrigation sprinkler waters a circular region with a radius of 14 feet. Find the circumference of the region watered by the sprinkler. This says use 22/7 for pi. We're not going to do that. We're going to use 3.14 for pi. So pi is about 3.14. All right, so knowing that the circumference is pi times the diameter, we also know that the diameter is twice the radius. So the circumference is also pi times 2 times the radius. So if the radius is 14, all we got to do is plug in 14. C equals 2 times 3.14, that's pi, times 14, that's our radius. So I just used this formula. And we can type that into our calculator. And we get 87.92. They rounded to 88, but 87.92 is more accurate. All right, so your turn. I want you to find the circumference of this circle. So remember, circumference equals pi times the diameter. Pause the video, multiply it out. You can use a calculator. Play it back to see if you got it right. Go. All right, I typed 3.14 times 11 into my calculator, and I got the circumference is 34.54 centimeters. All right, next example. A circular pond has a circumference of 628 feet. A model boat is moving directly across the pond along a radius at a rate of 5 feet per second. How long does it take the boat to get from the edge of the pond to the center? All right, so we know circumference is 2 pi r. But this time, we don't know what r is. We know what the circumference is. So I'm going to plug in 628 for the circumference and 3.14 for pi. And then we solve for r. So first, let's simplify the right side by multiplying 2 times 3.14. And then we get 6.28. Then to solve for r, we get r by itself, so then we need to divide by 6.28. Well, 628 divided by 6.28 is going to be 100. So the radius is about 100 feet. All right, so then the second step takes it a little further. Find the time it takes the boat to get from the edge of the pond to the center along the radius. So remember, the boat travels 5 feet per second. It has to travel 100 feet. So he can go 5 feet per 1 second. It's traveling 100 feet. We want to know how many seconds it's going to take him. This is kind of like our proportions from chapter 4. All right, so to solve that, we can do 100 divided by 5, and we get 20. So it takes the boat about 20 seconds to get to the center of the pond. All right, we're going to skip down to this one now. A circular garden has a circumference of 44 yards. All right, so there's our garden. The distance around the garden is 44 yards. Lars is digging a straight line along a diameter. There's our diameter of the garden at a rate of 7 yards per hour. How many hours will it take him to dig across the garden? Well, first we have to figure out what the diameter is. So to do that, remember circumference equals pi d. We know our circumference is 44. We know pi is 3.14, but we don't know d. So to find d, we're going to do 44 divided by 3.14. And we get the diameter is about 14. It says 14.0127. We'll just say 14. So it's 14 yards. He digs at 7 yards per hour. So let's see, 7 yards per 1 hour. He has to dig 14 yards. We want to know how many hours. Well, to find that, we can do 14 divided by 7. Or we could think, okay, 7 to get to 14, it multiplies by 2. So then we have to multiply 1 by 2. It will take him 2 hours to dig across the garden. All right, let's look at number 1. You're probably going to have to do numbers 3 through 5 for your homework. Okay, so circumference equals pi d. Remember, we're going to use 3.14 for pi. So the circumference in number 1, where the diameter is 9, is about 3.14 times 9. So let's type that into our calculator. And the circumference is about 28.26 inches. All right, so your job today is just numbers 3 through 5 and the notes video, of course. 3 through 5, you are finding the circumference of those 3 circles.